Today, I think I'm just going to continue in the general vein of random genres, I suppose. I mean, in the last three were what? Uh, War film and a biblical epic adventure weirdness with CGI, and yesterday was a sports drama crime film. So I suppose even within the genres themselves are quite varied, apart from the war film, which is just a war film. Anyway, yeah, I don't know, I might as well have just some genre I never usually watch before, and this time, I don't normally, but I don't mind them too much. I mean, I certainly like them more than war films, I suppose. Maybe they are more inherently likable, I suppose. Yeah, I'm referring to musicals. They're not quite. I don't mind some Sinatra sometimes, to be honest, but it's sort of cliched, and most of them look alike anyway. And well, all he ever does is tap his heels, and I don't know. I would incredibly like him as a personality, my way and all. Anyway, no, I don't think this is Sinatra I'm watching now, but it's also a musical anyway. So I think not sure what it's about, but we'll see, I guess. It is called Half a Sixpence, and clearly it's an old one because it is in Technicolor. And somehow I kind of like Technicolor even better. I mean, I don't know. Yeah, every film has different sort of colors, but and then it depends on whether the director, well, cinematographer, I suppose in this case, would like either a subdued color or obviously black and white is another option, or some sort of artificial sort of looking thing like with Noah. That was a weird sort of coloring scheme. I'm assuming all of it was computer generated, but the coloring scheme itself, the how it looked, how bright the colors were quite they weren't too bright, fitting in the whole thing. Anyway, yeah. Um, yeah. So anyway, yeah. Just let's see what this is like. I don't know if it'll get boring. Somehow it's even longer than the last couple of films I watched. I don't know how this is even possible. How a musical can be so long, but there we go. And yeah, it's so old. I'm assuming um this Sixpence thing really existed back then. I suppose they just used something from the past. I actually have never seen one. It sort of looks similar to um, what sort of like a 50p currently, but yeah, there's just an olive branch. Is that an olive branch? Oh, I don't know. Forgot where this is from, but assuming either 60s or either 50s or 60s. I'm assuming. And what do you know? Jacob Rees-Mogg was alive back then. Of course he was. He was alive in the 17th century. And yeah, it's copyrighted 67. So I'm assuming I'm not sure when this sort of currency was phased out, but assuming later. Um, they use a nice looking font. So this just said it's adapted from the novel Kips by H.G. Wells. What's Kips got to do with Half of Sixpence? And I mean, well, I haven't seen it, I guess, so I cannot tell, but so far, I don't know, just associate H.G. Wells with science fiction. This doesn't seem like science fiction at all. Huh, strange. I had no idea. I was going into an adaptation of H.G. Wells. Still haven't seen the Time Machine. Yeah, they the first song is entertaining, I suppose. It's sarcastic, and the bit about him being economic even with kisses was funny. Um, it's quite yeah. The whole thing is it's it's sort of reminiscent of Mary Poppins in the sense, and that was also about this sort of in a way class struggle, but not quite because even the children of bankers struggled against their parents. Um, but there were elements. Obviously, Van Dyke's character in that film played the role of these people here. No, the so-called charity. I mean, this. I've never heard of a charity that works like a like an industry. Unless somehow back then charities had a different definition. I mean, at best, charities need volunteers or obviously paid people, but not. I suppose they can try paying little, but they cannot really expect too much though. But this Shelford guy looks like Hitchcock, doesn't he? Just a bit. Has the same facial sort of resemblance. Yeah. Also, how did he not age much more, considering that about 10 years must have passed from the beginning of the movie to this point after they've all grown up and sung their song. Yeah, some things are just not taken care of very much, in such a fictional setting. But well, this doesn't say explicitly, but um, I don't think I could see on the newspaper any dates either. It doesn't seem like it's set in the 60s, so it seems like it's set in the Victorian era or so, such. Anyway, it's good that it retains this sense of sarcasm. Seems like it's going to remain. But seriously, I didn't. I it really doesn't seem like H.G. Wells at all. Like I have never even heard that he wrote such a thing, but it just I don't know, it doesn't, right? And I mean, what he wrote also War of the Worlds. Everything he wrote was science fiction, wasn't it? I think I watched something once that wasn't. I don't know. Just, and again, he did do a social commentary, so I suppose this is part of it. But I didn't think he did something like I don't know Dickens with a bit of comedy, maybe describe this. Yeah. In the fairground scene, they seemingly, I'm assuming it's intentional. They made the dress reflect a similar hue to the rest. It's everything is sort of a shade of pink for some reason, and that half sixpence song is a bit cliched, isn't it? I'm assuming it's some sort of central song, considering it has the name of the movie's title itself. And it doesn't also very much work after, I suppose if one watched this at the point it was released, maybe, if the system was still there, but, I don't even know if they were really half of each other. And yet, you know, I mean, all that one shouldn't really analyze these songs so much, they don't really very much succeed to be scrutinized. I mean, they're just songs anyway. But why should half a sixpence mean half a romance? It's doesn't quite translate, does it? It's obviously a symbolic thing, but should it mean half a romance? No, isn't that a pessimistic thing? I mean, Yeah, that's just, I suppose I prefer the previous song at any rate. I think it was, more of a sarcastic social commentary. This was an attempt at soppy romance, really. But they just met after a decade or something. How could they just suddenly burst out in song? So the other one was a bit more realistic as well. And yeah, the scene on the stage is cliched as well. I mean, this is the problem with musicals. They can be cliche. Somehow Mary Poppins, it somehow it manages, succeeds to avoid a lot of that. I mean, some might be, but not most. I mean, this is at least the second song that is cliche. This was cliched for a different manner. It's not about romance now, but it's I don't know. It's not very convincing. I mean, sure, he just picked a single instrument to focus on, but I don't know. And there's some strange dancing, not necessarily negative, but I mean, at one point they were transitioning from ballet to some sort of clownish dancing, and yeah, that wasn't too bad. The light changes were interesting, but the topic was strange. I certainly prefer the song, the relevant song on a similar topic from Fiddler on the Roof. I mean, obviously, that's much more somber, that's much more, serious. So, it's sort of a different sort of direction about Helen that they did about this sort of topic as well. I mean, at least how it begins, and this just goes into ridiculousness, really. I mean, I don't know. Well, if such topics are sung about, they can be ridiculous. I don't know. Fiddler on the Roof just ended up sounding um, interesting. I don't know, just somber and interesting, I suppose. And I think it's the most popular song of theirs as well. I guess that's how something can sound really, just meaningful. That was meaningful, wasn't it? As opposed to this, really, which is, I mean, it does have a comedic sense. So, I'm not saying serious is better than comedy. But then the song at the beginning was comedic as well. But it made more sense, you know? I mean, it's not, I'm not saying they should, make as a super realistic sense or something. It's only some fictional thing that they happen to sing about, and it's always, I mean, in comparison, guys and dolls and a lot of nonsense as well. So they could do. I mean, just give it. Oh, generally, I guess I don't know. Uh, maybe because maybe, I mean, it might be because I prefer violin to a banjo. I don't think it's as simple as that. Though. By the way, it's kind of funny, but not really. I'm just saying it's just a reference in terms of what I've recently watched as well. So it's not like everyone will simply reference this in their heads if they haven't immediately. I mean, I knew who Methuselah was before, but after watching Noah, that's I don't know, it was strange. Just he seemingly lived in a cave for hundreds of years or something, only longed for berries. And what do you know? Now he's an alcoholic beverage that can be blamed for cutting one's hand. And yeah, and as I said before, I do like Technicolor. It's a shame that modern films not used much anymore. I mean, obviously they seem to rely on, well, films still differ on what kind of color schemes they use, but Technicolor isn't used as well, is it? I think it was mostly used when I think black and white was still cheaper, and they needed to. It's kind of like filling in the blanks, isn't it? With Technicolor. Not sure they did it. I'm assuming it went done manually. I'm assuming some sort of automated process, but computers couldn't have been very powerful back then, could they? Should we about it? Yeah, I do like how Technicolor looks. It's actually kind of more vibrant than most modern films, isn't it? Makes it a bit unrealistic due to that, but it's still it's quite vibrant. It's not a bad combination with a crazy musical, I guess one could say. But yeah, the other one, the next one after the last one about the weird banjo thing. Yeah, this one now was about jealousy apparently, and you know it still isn't very believable because I mean they've only ever met once, and I mean at one point she even said he doesn't like whiskey. I mean I don't remember them ever talking about it or him refusing or anything. So I don't know, it's a bit. I know I just shouldn't just overdo this sort of thinking thing, but I mean it's only some random weird musical, but I don't know. I mean if something still makes little sense, and I don't know, do people get jealous after the first date? It's only the first date anyway, and even then, this is the problem. You begin begin to sing on the first date, and yeah, anyway. But at least the scene after that weird actor comes back with a Lord. It's yeah, that's at least funny. It can be funny at least potentially. And you know what? This is the problem as mentioned earlier. With regards to changes in currency. In this case, it's changes in inflation. I mean, over the decades, is that he fainted over 1,250 a year. I mean, obviously, it's a bit of extra work is required to translate that currency. Obviously, it means more than it does now. But what it means now, that would be unlivable a year. But obviously, it meant more than. I suppose this is why they shouldn't really rely so much on, especially movies that aren't supposed to be thought about too much. To rely on either currency, which is ever changeable, or inflation. Well, I mean, it's one thing if you're reading about how much money a film made at that point in time, and then if you're reading it online and you're able to translate it easily. But if you're watching a film, you're not. You need to specifically research it externally. And yeah, it's funny how Edwin changed his tone as soon as he sees Skips returning. All the things he mentioned that he does uh, could be done without any sort of wealth. Banjos, I'm assuming, aren't that expensive. I think violins are more expensive. Yeah, reading newspapers obviously can be done. Well, obviously, I mean, now more than ever, online and all. Like, firewalls can be bypassed as well. And driving a car. Well, many people do that, obviously. One thing you cannot do, of course, is get someone he loves. No, wait, yeah, I thought he was referring to the owner of the shop. But no, Edwin is the cat. And, yeah, the owner was Shelford. Thought maybe Shelford was a surname or something. Edwin was his name. No, that's another funny thing. He just bypassed him. And yeah, the song he sings under the rain there wasn't too bad. It's sort of forlorn and such. I thought it didn't last very long either. Like the one with the bunch of, I suppose they all have different intentions. In this case, they're simply wondering various responses. Uh, yeah, and I still cannot believe this is adapted from something H.G. Wells wrote. I mean, it's more similar to something that uh, something like Ernest. That what was it called again? It's a play, not a musical. The Ernest, Mr. Ernest, or something. I forgot the exact title. By Oscar Wilde. Yeah, it's similar to what he did. Certainly not similar to War of the Worlds. Um, this is the most weird thing ever. I mean, H.G. Wells then must have diversified quite a bit. Most science fiction authors just write science fiction, uh, or like magical fantasy, like Gerard Tolkien, even Harry Potter's author mostly does magical tales, not much else. I don't know, just expecting some sort of time travel at some point. That makes little sense. Well, there are time lapses, but that's different. So yeah, this is obviously going to, at least for the last hour, going to be a comedy of manners, I suppose. Before it was a comedy of, um, I don't know, variety, I guess. They try to be comic with a bit of romance and a bit of, with class stuff. But yeah, this is clearly, it's like, uh, struggling to even handle the dessert. I don't know why they seemingly imply that dunking biscuits is bad manners or something. I don't know about that, but it's pretty good. I mean, you know, they taste much better upon dunking them. They can crumble, but they taste better. And you know, when she said to come again, I was expecting the other guy who before told him that she shouldn't come too early. It's already early enough. I was expecting him to say, but do not come too often. They didn't. Some kind of a disappointment. It would have been in the same vein. By the way, what's the point of holding an umbrella when there isn't really much sun that I could see, so it's not blocking the sun, and it's also being held in the direction of the oncoming wind, presumably. Well, this is not very certain, so, but it could be sort of blockage really. I mean, it could probably doesn't make much difference in the end in terms of how much pressure there is, but it could make the boat slightly more difficult to row. I suppose. I don't know. Just makes total sense to hold an umbrella because there's no rain either. Suffice to say. It's too bad that actor playwright isn't included much anymore. He just simply disappeared, and he was funny, so could have been made better with him in. Also, the first song made it seem like it was going to be some sort of criticism about inequality or such. Obviously, I'm not expecting deep commentary from a musical, but I don't know, it turned out to be a shallow thing about, inheritance as such. I mean, I don't know how then, but so far it's turning to be much more shallow than usual. I'm assuming the first romantic interest will return and such, but either way it will remain shallow, I'm assuming. And when they sing that thing about days of the week, I mean, it's not too bad. I mean, in terms of dancing and such, and the usage of umbrellas and the environment. But the lyrics aren't very comprehensive. There's just a lot of repetition. Short choruses are like that usually. Songs do tend to repeat, but this had a lot of repetition. And they seem to think, well, as long as the days of the week rhyme with each other and inverted commas, since they all end with day, then that's sufficient, and it's really just repetition rather than rhyme in this sense. And yeah, so turned out like I thought it would with regards to the two girls. The regatta is a bit cliched, obviously. Never mind. With regards to they say at one point a gentleman of perspires. And it's funny because about 60 years later, recently, a few months ago, uh, Andrew, one of the Queen's sons, said that he had some sort of problem with his sweat glands or something due to the war, whatever excuse it was. Because that's one way, huh? Gentleman gets PTSD and never passes. Or gentleman makes excuses. Yeah. And yeah, he's obviously going to feel out of place and go back to his first girl. These stories are told many times in a way. They don't really say much that's different. That's novel in some sense. I don't think I've seen a Regatta and the others, but it's a fairly boring thing, isn't it? As a race, it's kind of boring. Also depends on a lot of cooperation, and it's annoying. If someone isn't doing as well, that's team games are annoying. But yeah, there's some better comedy than usual, at least in the dinner scene at the end. Uh, when he's about to eat that thing, and even the portraits are looking at him. That's I think the peak of the comedy. See, this is what I meant. I mean, there were so many songs that seemingly meant little, and then all the relationships are practically dysfunctional. Even relationships that they think should work, that after the marriage, for example, what's the point of marrying someone if you don't even have a solid relationship with them first? And in a way, it's like a bipolar sort of film, the movie and musical. It goes from singing on the rooftops to shouting at each other. Yeah, I don't remember shouting in Mary Poppins. I suppose that's why I prefer it, but um, even if it had everything else, all the songs without any shouting, it'd just be shut up. But with added shouting, I mean, it's not even funny. I mean, sure, he just wants to stick to doing things in some sort of proper way, and it's absurd. I mean, he said he left it over. He just told off everyone earlier in the dinner. What was the point of insisting upon it within a marriage, then within a personal relationship? I mean, I'm not expecting a musical to give relationship advice or something, or to have ideal relationships. Obviously, dysfunctional relationships exist in movies as well, but when it comes to musicals, it's even more absurd. I mean, at least with most dramas concerning dysfunctional families, they do not suddenly end up singing like everything is just perfect. It's absurd. I mean, either have a sensible relationship or do not sing about the relationship, or only sing if things repair themselves or something. I don't know, it's supposed to sort of a minor sort of issue, but it hinders enjoyment. I mean, shouting generally hinders enjoyment unless it's something. But I mean, come on, shouting over some people who all have the same last name here, what's the point? They're truly trying to ruin the entire film at the end here. I mean, what's the point? That the film was much better than this, but uh, just this functionality is really being splashed upon. Yeah, well, finished it and well, at least I didn't end with shouting, but I don't know. At the end, I mean, it seems like things were turning and seemingly making slightly more substantial sense, but then it didn't really. They should have got that actor playwright more clearly. He only appeared 3 times. He was fun whenever he appeared. Somehow, only 3 times. Every time there's some sort of malfunction at his vehicle. Um, yeah, and I don't know. At the end, though, it still seemed to opt for a relatively shallow ending. I mean, I don't know what I expected. I guess it's difficult to. I mean, this was around the time when Mary Poppins was made as well, and yeah, it's kind of difficult to go up to that. I mean, there was a sort of a dreamy scene as well, but nothing in comparison to the equivalent one in Mary Poppins when all the penguins start dancing and stuff. That's just Mary Poppins, though. I suppose it's just I don't know. Somehow they succeeded in making nearly every song sound brilliant. I suppose for a musical, it really somehow just sounds better than the average musical. The average musical is usually cliche and such. Mary Poppins stars is I don't know, just pretty cool. And she isn't obsessed with wealth herself or anything. Whereas this guy became, and at the end, and nearly the end, he became almost unrelatable. What was the point of shouting because he wants more rooms than he can even fit in? I mean, really, shouting is just what's the point? But not shout on. Uh, it's the most relevant thing, but no, I suppose yeah, I shouldn't necessarily. I mean, this isn't supposed to be a real like a Dickens adaptation. I'm seriously surprised it's H.G. Wells. I mean, I didn't think I'm assuming this isn't a musical he literally wrote, but they say it's an adaptation from a book. But even the topic is bizarre for him to write about, I suppose. We'll see the details, I guess. I'm assuming though I'd enjoy his science fiction more than because when it comes to comedy of manners, I suppose Oscar Wilde cannot be beaten. Really, Ernest, for example, is a pretty good one, and in comparison, this is I don't know. Maybe you should have focused on science fiction, I suppose. Um, this was sort of mediocre, really, at best. I mean, I mean, it's not like at the end they even solved the thing with the fraud. Not that I'm expecting them to, but you know. Anyway, yeah, it's not exactly the best kind of musical. It's not the worst. I don't know. It's mediocre, as I say. It's average at best. I don't know, maybe a slight bit of average. Anyway.